Hey, Dr. Mike here. If you want to live forever-ish, you have to know what's in and what's not. Stay tuned to find out.
You're listening to Live Foreverish, a show dedicated to helping you live just a little longer. Here's your hosts, Dr. Mike and Dr. Crystal Gossard.
All right, welcome to Live Forever-ish. Dr. Crystal, one of our favorite shows. What's in and what's not?
That's right. If you want to live a long, vibrant life, it's all about health span, quality of life as we age gracefully.
So we have three things that you want or that you want to consider, and then one thing that you don't want or you want to avoid, something like that. So let's get started with the three ins for living forever-ish. And in number one is green tea. But specifically, when we're talking about periodontitis, inflammation of your gums, we already know green tea is fantastic, right? I mean, a great antioxidant. What's it doing here for, inflamed gums, Dr. Crystal?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, our sponsor, Life Extension, has been writing about green tea and how it benefits the oral cavity and how it has kind of a natural antibacterial effect. And that's what we're seeing play out in this research. What's nice about this study is that it was a two-part study. So lab experiment to kind of see exactly what's happening with the green tea from a laboratory perspective with the bacteria. And then a human study to see if that benefit translates to humans. And so, yes, we're seeing that green tea, specifically matcha, which, you kind of find in a powder form, a more concentrated green tea.
Matcha tends to be a little stronger, right? In flavor, I think.
It's I wouldn't say stronger. To me, it has more of an earthier flavor. That's kind of my take on the flavor of the matcha. But matcha incorporated into a mouthwash in this study twice daily. And we see that it lowered the levels of a specific type of bacteria associated with inflammation of the gums.
So is it just, I guess it was just pure maca in this mouthwash with some sort of like just water or something, or was it mixed with a pre-made mouthwash?
No. So the researchers gave the participants their batch of their matcha powder and gave them the instructions on how to make their homemade mouthwash. I don't have the exact ratio of the water to the matcha, but that is in the study. I did pull that part up in order to calculate the exact amount of matcha that was administered twice daily, which was about 1,286 milligrams, but they made it at home.
That is pretty cool. And I love the way this is set up. This study was published in Microbiology Spectrum recent, May 2024. I like that, because sometimes, Dr. Crystal, you know this, that just because something is shown to do something in a lab, in a petri dish, that doesn't always mean it translates to something clinically, some clinical effectiveness. But I like that they put the two together. They saw it work in a petri dish, and now they got the human clinical data to show that. That's it completes the story, if you think about it, right? I like that. It's really cool. This is important. Periodontitis actually occurs in, over 50% of people over the age of 30. It's big.
Yeah, it's more common than I recognize when I read this study. I hear about this all the time. My neighbor's an endodontist, and so she's always talking about, when people kind of let these gum diseases go on for a long time, you end up with an oral surgeon and a specialist, and she talks about the pain that they're in, and so you definitely want to get ahead of inflammation of the gums. We know gingivitis is kind of that earlier phase, and then the periodontitis is a more advanced form of that inflammation, and it can eventually affect the gums. I mean, the bones.
Not just, I mean, I actually think if you wait too long, you're not only you're going to need a surgeon for your mouth, you're going to need a cardiologist. You're going to need maybe, a rheumatologist, because we know that a lot of what goes on up here affects you systemically.
That's right.
So oral care is really important. So there you go. Who would have thought that? Maca green tea mouthwash. I kind of want to try it and see what it tastes like. Okay, let's go on to number 2. Number 2, I'm going to set this up because number 2 could have been an out, where I could have said the out for today is high blood pressure, right? But we're keeping it as an in because we already know people understand the importance of controlling blood pressure. It's a key risk factor for cardiovascular disease, no doubt. But the question becomes is, if I need to be treated, how low do I need to be treated? What's my target systolic, that top number? And Dr. Crystal, this is an important conversation because when I was in medical school, which was, it was a few years ago, but not too long ago, we were taught that 140 was a normal systolic number. And many people weren't treated at 140.
Okay.
So what do we now know about?
Changed.
Right. So now we want to be a little bit more intensive with how we're treating blood pressure, because what is our ultimate goal then?
Well, ultimately, the goal is less than 120 for that systolic, that top number, 120 over 80, that bottom number being the diastolic blood pressure. And so what the researchers are seeing in this particular paper, again, it was, I'm not sure if we mentioned this, but this is findings from a clinical trial presented at the American Heart Association's Scientific Sessions 2023. And they're just seeing that being more aggressive with lowering blood pressure with sometimes multiple prescription medications to get that blood pressure below 120 reduces risk of cardiovascular events.
I'm glad you brought that up too, because we've learned over the years that if you try to use one class of drug, let's say an ACE inhibitor, right? Very common prescription drug. It's usually the first step that people start with is an ACE inhibitor. If you try to take that ACE inhibitor and just keep increasing the dose, and you're trying to get that systolic down, it turns out that even at the max dose of an ACE inhibitor, the net effect is very small. So it's better to actually start a different class of drug. And so you often will find people on 2 or 3 different classes of drug. Now, they don't like that. I'm taking 3 drugs for my blood. However, it takes those different types of hypertensives to really bring you down, because there are multiple reasons why we have high blood pressure. So it often takes a multiple class approach.
Yes, very true. And so for this study, the duration was 3 years and over 11,000 hypertensive adults with established cardiovascular disease, or at least 2 major risk factors for cardiovascular disease. And after 2 years, compared with standard treatment, the intensive treatment group, again, the standard treatment is that 140 that you mentioned. The intensive treatment, the 120, prevented 12% of heart attacks, strokes, revascularization procedures, death from cardiovascular causes, or hospitalization or emergency department visits for heart failure.
Yeah. So there you go.
Wow.
120 is our target, and that's where you need to get to, even if it's 2 or 3 different types of drugs. Don't worry about it. What's more important is you control the blood pressure and not have a heart attack.
Very true. Now, one caveat, that I think it's important to mention is that the individuals had normal or mild reduced kidney function. You have to be careful aggressively using this intensive approach with someone who does have kidney failure.
Yeah, you got to be careful there for sure. But in somebody who's, ultimately healthy, you're not quite controlled where we want. Talk to your doctor, but maybe it's time to add another class.
Uh-huh.
Let's throw a diuretic in there. Let's throw a calcium channel blocker in there and see if we can get you to 120. Right.
Let's do that. And then one more thing I think it's worth mentioning is many high blood pressure medications deplete essential nutrients. So, of course, as a nutritionist, I have to say, pause. Let's just make sure you are asking the pharmacist, hey, is this depleting my magnesium? Is there anything I need to be taking to make sure I stay I stay healthy from a nutritional perspective?
I like that too. You got to watch your magnesium levels. You got to watch your potassium levels if you're on diuretics. Even with potassium sparing diuretics that are out there, you still got to follow you got to do an occasional blood test. Make sure you're not getting depleted on some of those key, because we know magnesium and potassium, those are so important for helping with blood pressure. And if you're taking a drug for blood pressure that's wiping those out, it's kind of like, what's the net effect? What's the point? So definitely think about your nutritional status there. Let's go on to number 3. And I laugh a little bit when I say this, because this was one of my dad's favorite things to eat right out of the jar.
Oh,
sauerkraut. Yeah. He would take sauerkraut, open it, take a fork and eat it. It was like his favorite thing, and it stunk, and it was just strong and everything. But it's fermented cabbage, so we know right there this is going to be good for you.
Absolutely. We know the power of fermentation, how it transforms foods, how it creates enzymes, how it just helps to nourish and kind of restore and bring back balance of our gut bugs. And so, yes, we love fermented foods.
Yeah. And then you take on top of that, you're fermenting a cruciferous vegetable. And we know those are really healthy for you. So, when you read fermented cabbage, sauerkraut, this is good stuff. I don't know if I would eat it right out of the jar. I think there's better ways to get it into your diet, right? But why are we talking about it today? What research has come up with this?
Yeah, so it's a randomized double-blind intervention, 34 patients with IBS. And then this study, the participants consumed sauerkraut every day for 6 weeks. And in the results, eating that sauerkraut led to significant beneficial changes in the gut microbiota, and also led to significant improvements in IBS symptom severity scores. And so that makes sense. Sauerkraut, just one serving, can contain up to 28 different strains of beneficial bacteria. So, obviously you would hope that the researchers would have seen the results that they did. And it's nice to see that the balance was restored, but the symptoms improved as well.
Yep. What about pasteurized versus unpasteurized? What do you suggest?
It doesn't matter. In this particular study, it did not matter if it was pasteurized or unpasteurized.
What do you prefer as a nutritionist? Would you go with the unpasteurized?
I would, as a nutritionist, thinking about food safety, I think if the research shows that there's benefit with both, then why take the chance of going unpasteurized?
But yeah, that's a good point. I know a lot of people are really diving into that unpasteurized bandwagon, right? There's a lot of movements out there with the raw milks and even with some fermented foods. So anyways, this is great. One of my favorite hot dogs I ever had was at Chicago Stadium watching the Cubs play. And it was simply a hot dog with sauerkraut on it. It was so good.
No mustard?
Oh yeah, there was mustard. Yeah, there were the condiments. There was mustard on it, but I meant there was no cheese, no anything else.
Oh no, that's how you do it. You do the hot dog or the sausage dog, the sauerkraut, and the spicy mustard.
Yes, very.
That is it.
and I was just watching a good old baseball game. It was really cool. Really enjoyed it. All right, let's get to the out then. This is what you don't want. We've talked about the problem with excess sugar consumption in our society for a long time, and we're going to continue to talk about it because it's not changing that much. And one of the things that we wanted to highlight here, you might consider this a key takeaway, is that even small amounts of junky, sugary foods can teach your brain to want to eat more of those foods. Isn't that
Doesn't
weird?
that make you sad?
Yeah,
It makes me sad because in a world where you want to emphasize moderation and you don't have to completely eliminate things from your diet and eating mindfully, what we're seeing is as mindful as you want to be, if you go down a path of consuming junk foods, you're just making it harder on yourself.
Yeah. You crave it. You want it more. I mean, I think all of us probably have experienced that in some way. Certain potato chips for me, if I start eating those again, I could go on a binger and get down certain potato chips. You like the what are the cheesy, come on, the fish, your favorite little,
Cheez-Its.
Cheez-Its. Yeah. Cheez-Its.
I haven't had a Cheez-It in a year. I had to just stop buying them. I would buy them for the kids. And I had to stop because I kept craving them. I couldn't stop.
Yeah. So I think we've all experienced that a little bit. So tell us about what's going on here. I think this was some researchers kind of looking at whether frequent exposure to high fat and high sugar foods would alter taste preferences or something, right? Is that what they were looking at?
Taste preferences and brain activity.
Okay, both.
So they were looking at both. And so it was I think the study, in their efforts to control the study to make sure there was some type of control effort, there were two groups. Group 1 ate a high-fat, high-sugar yogurt snack twice a day for 8 weeks. I can see how that can happen easily because most of your yogurts on the market are really high in sugar. And then group 2 consumed a low-fat, low-sugar yogurt twice daily for 8 weeks. So those are your two groups. After 8 weeks, the participants returned for their evaluation, and then they set them up where they could choose different foods when they brought them back to the research facility. And then they also had the participants not only see like which types of foods they chose at the research facility, but then they also set them up to taste milkshakes while their brain was hooked up to an MRI to monitor brain activity. How did the brain respond to the milkshake, which is high fat, high sugar? And so for the results, the researchers found that the participants on that low fat, low sugar, they were less likely. No, I'm sorry. The participants who originally consumed the high fat, high sugar yogurt twice a day for 8 weeks, they were less likely to choose low fat, low sugar snacks when they came in for their free for all at the research facility. They had increased brain response to highly palatable foods like milkshakes. So meaning, when they had them sample or taste the milkshakes, their brains lit up. They were really the brains were excited to have that. Yes.
Yes.
And they had and what they saw is they saw similar increase in fat tissue, leptin levels, and BMI as the participants. So it wasn't due to like changes in the chemistry of some of your hormones, for your satiating hormones like leptin, or due to any body composition changes. This was due to the fact that for 8 weeks, they were programming their brain for high fat, high sugar foods. And then whenever it was time to have their free for all, that's all they wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they trained their brain that way, and that's what the brain now wants. Now they got to break that right after that study.
Yes. And
that's fascinating.
You said that, Dr. Mike, because you can break it.
Yeah. It takes some work, but you can break it. I know I've done this several times in my life. And, I've been low carb for a long time, low sugar. I mean, if I tasted one of those milkshakes, I'd be like, it would be way too much for me.
Yeah.
I can taste too much sugar, like easy.
And that's a good point, Dr. Mike. And what's nice is I bet you're able to truly enjoy the sweetness of fruit. Like, if you eat an apple or you have an orange, you can enjoy it. But when your brain is used to high fructose corn syrup at the amount of 50 grams of sugar in one drink, then you can't even enjoy what nature has given us.
Berry the other day, and I was just like in heaven. I was just like with one blackberry.
Say that again. I missed
a blackberry. A blackberry.
Blackberry.
And it was so plump because they're so in season right now. And I was just, it was so good. But it was, and you're right, because it's coming from nature. It was like the sweetness was just at that perfect level, right?
Yes.
Not overdoing it. It's just at this perfect level. Anyway, so that's fantastic. There's your 3 ins and an out for our show today. Green tea to keep periodontitis down. Then we talked about getting that blood pressure, that top number in that 120 or less range. Sauerkraut, woohoo! On a hot dog with spicy mustard. Yeah. And then we talked about what's out is, of course, junk food with high fat, high sugar. You're going to train your brain to like it. So keep that in mind. Dr. Crystal, fantastic information today. Thank you for joining me. Don't forget, you go to liveforeverish.com. Tons of other episodes to download there. When you do, please like, share, comment, and go ahead and subscribe. Whatever aggregate, whatever place you get your podcast from, go ahead and subscribe so you never miss a show. That's liveforeverish.com. And then, of course, our sponsor, Life Extension. Go to lifeextension.com. When you're shopping around and you check out, you can use the podcast code podcast and you get 10% off $50 or more plus free shipping and handling. That's the discount code podcast. I'm Dr. Mike. That's
Dr. Crystal.
Thanks for listening.